Somewhere in the ancient city of Alexandria, Egypt, there existed a building that held the entire knowledge of the human race. Not just books, not just stories. Inside its walls were surgical procedures that modern doctors only rediscovered in the 20th century. Mathematical formulas that wouldn't be solved again for 1,500 years. Maps that showed continents no one was supposed to know existed. And texts so controversial, so dangerous, that powerful men decided the world was better off without them. And then, one day, it burned. But here is what nobody tells you. The fire wasn't the tragedy. What happened before the fire, and what was deliberately removed before it started, that is the real story. This is the lost Library of Alexandria. And today, we're going inside. To understand what the library held, you first have to understand the city it was born in. In 331 BC, Alexander the Great conquered Egypt. He was 25 years old. And rather than simply claim the land, he did something no conqueror before him had done. He built a city from nothing and dedicated it to the pursuit of knowledge. Alexandria was not just a city, it was a statement. Alexander wanted it to become the intellectual capital of the entire known world, a place where Greek philosophy, Egyptian wisdom, Persian science, and Babylonian astronomy would all collide under one roof. He never lived to see it finished. He died 2 years later, at 32 years old, possibly poisoned. But one of his generals, Ptolemy I, took control of Egypt, and he remembered Alexander's vision. Around 285 BC, Ptolemy II officially established what would become the greatest library in human history, the Royal Library of Alexandria, also called the Museion, meaning Seat of the Muses. It wasn't just a place to store books, it was a fully functioning research institution, a university, a think tank, a laboratory. Scholars received free housing, free food, and a salary, all paid by the state, in exchange for one thing: produce knowledge. At its height, the library employed over 100 of the most brilliant minds on Earth, all living together, all working together, all competing to solve the greatest questions of their age. And what they produced inside those walls would not be matched by humanity for over 1,000 years. Ancient sources tell us the library held somewhere between 400,000 and 700,000 individual scrolls. To put that in context, the average scroll contained roughly the equivalent of one modern book chapter. So we're talking about a collection that, in today's terms, would fill a university library. But the number of scrolls is not what makes this story extraordinary. It's what was written on them. One of the most astonishing documents in the library was written by a man named Eratosthenes, the library's chief librarian, around 240 BC. Using nothing but 2 sticks, 2 cities, and the angle of the sun's shadow, Eratosthenes calculated the circumference of the Earth. His answer: approximately 40,000 kilometers. The actual circumference of the Earth is 40,075 kilometers. He was accurate to within 0.2%. In 240 BC, and yet 1,700 years later, sailors were still afraid of falling off the edge. Another scholar at the library, Aristarchus of Samos, went even further. Around 270 BC, he wrote a document proposing something so radical it was nearly considered blasphemy: that the Earth was not the center of the universe. That the Earth, in fact, orbited the Sun. This is called the heliocentric model. We credit Copernicus with discovering it in 1543 AD. But Aristarchus had already written it down 1,800 years earlier. And his original manuscript lived in the Library of Alexandria. When the library was destroyed, that manuscript vanished. Copernicus had to discover it all over again. The library also held extensive Egyptian medical texts, some of them dating back to 1500 BC, which described surgical procedures for treating tumors, setting broken bones, and suturing wounds with remarkable precision. One document, believed to be stored there, described the brain as the center of thought and emotion, not the heart, as most ancient cultures believed. That understanding wasn't commonly accepted in Western medicine until the 1800s. Perhaps most controversially, the library reportedly held maps. Not just maps of the Mediterranean, maps of sub-Saharan Africa, maps of India and Central Asia, and, according to some historians, maps that showed coastlines bearing a striking resemblance to South America and Antarctica, thousands of years before European explorers claimed to have discovered them. These maps were compiled from the accounts of ancient traders, sailors, and explorers, people who traveled farther than the official history books admit. And all of it, every scroll, every calculation, every map, every surgical manual, sat in one building in Alexandria. Beyond science, the library held texts that cut to the core of human civilization. Religious texts, philosophical works, and historical accounts that existed nowhere else on Earth. Around 250 BC, Ptolemy II commissioned something extraordinary: a complete translation of the Hebrew scriptures into Greek. 72 Jewish scholars were brought to Alexandria and given the task. The result was called the Septuagint, the oldest known translation of what would become the Old Testament. This was significant for one crucial reason. The Hebrew originals that were used for that translation, texts that predated the versions we have today, were kept in Alexandria. Scholars have long debated how much the biblical texts we use today differ from those originals, and the answer may have been sitting in the library. When it burned, those comparison texts burned with it. We know from ancient references that the library held complete works of authors whose writings have almost entirely disappeared. The playwright Sophocles wrote 123 plays. We have 7. The philosopher Aristotle wrote over 200 works on topics from biology to politics to the nature of the soul. We have fewer than 50. The historian Polybius wrote 40 volumes of world history. We have 5. Every lost volume, every destroyed play, every missing philosophical text almost certainly had a copy in Alexandria. What haunts historians most is this: we don't even know what we don't know. We can only catalogue the works that survived long enough for other ancient writers to mention them. The books we don't know about, the ones written and stored and never referenced elsewhere, those are simply gone forever. Ancient sources also hint that the library held texts that certain rulers found deeply uncomfortable. Accounts of uprisings, prophecies about falling empires, religious texts that contradicted official state religion. One ancient historian wrote that certain scrolls in the collection were kept in a separate, restricted section, not available to general scholars, accessible only to the library's leadership, and occasionally to the ruling Ptolemaic pharaohs themselves. What those scrolls contained has never been confirmed. But the fact that a deliberate separation existed, that some knowledge was considered too sensitive for open access, tells us something important. The library wasn't just a repository of knowledge. It was also a vault. This is where history gets complicated, because the story of the library's destruction is not the simple tale of one dramatic fire that most people have been told. The truth is, it was destroyed multiple times by multiple people over hundreds of years. And not all of those people were mindless invaders. The first significant damage to the library came not from a barbarian horde, but from one of history's most celebrated leaders. Julius Caesar arrived in Alexandria in 48 BC, drawn into Egypt's civil war between Cleopatra and her brother Ptolemy XIII. When Ptolemy's forces tried to cut off Caesar's fleet in the harbor, Caesar ordered his own ships burned to prevent their capture. Caesar knew the fire was spreading toward the most valuable archive on Earth, and he let it burn to save his military position. As Rome's power grew, and Christianity became the official religion of the Roman Empire, something more deliberate began to happen. Texts that contradicted Christian doctrine, pagan philosophical works, alternative religious scriptures, astronomical models that challenged a geocentric universe, were systematically removed from circulation. In 391 AD, Emperor Theodosius I issued an edict ordering the destruction of pagan temples throughout the empire. In Alexandria, a Christian mob, reportedly led by Bishop Theophilus, attacked the Serapeum, a secondary library annex connected to the main library. The knowledge that survived Rome's early Christian period did so largely because monks chose to copy it. and monks copied what they considered useful. Everything else was allowed to disappear. The most controversial chapter in the library's destruction involves the Arab conquest of Alexandria in 641 AD, under the Caliph Omar. Omar reportedly replied, "If the books agree with the Quran, they are unnecessary. If they disagree, they are dangerous. Either way, burn them." The books were supposedly distributed to the city's bathhouses as fuel and burned over a period of 6 months. By the time the Arab scholars who revered knowledge arrived in Alexandria, the great library was already effectively gone. The final blow had been struck, not by ignorance, but by ideology. 3 different powers, 3 different reasons: military necessity, religious suppression, ideological control. All 3 looked at the same building, the greatest repository of human knowledge ever assembled, and decided the world was safer without it. Here is the question that genuinely keeps historians awake at night. Not how the library was destroyed, but what the destruction actually cost us. Because progress is not linear. Knowledge, once lost, can take centuries to recover. Ancient Alexandrian doctors had identified that certain mold-based substances could kill infections. They documented this in medical papyri. Penicillin, the discovery of mold-based antibiotics, was credited to Alexander Fleming in 1928. How many people died of preventable infections in those 2,000 years between? Hero of Alexandria, working in the 1st century AD, invented a working steam-powered device, a spinning ball powered by steam jets. He documented it in detail. The Industrial Revolution, driven by the steam engine, began in the 1700s AD. 1,700 years after Hero had already written down the basic principle. Archimedes, whose complete works were stored in Alexandria, documented the use of concentrated solar energy to focus heat beams capable of setting fire to ships. We are currently investing billions into concentrated solar power technology. Archimedes documented the principle over 2,200 years ago. And these are only the examples we know about, because brief references survived in other texts. The works that were mentioned nowhere else, copied by no one, referenced by no surviving author, those remain completely invisible to us. We cannot mourn what we don't know we lost. That is perhaps the most chilling thing about the Library of Alexandria. The darkness it left behind isn't the darkness of fire. It's the darkness of silence. There is one question that refuses to die among historians, archaeologists, and conspiracy theorists alike. Did anyone save anything before it burned? The answer, almost certainly, is yes. We know that wealthy Roman citizens collected Alexandrian scrolls as status symbols. We know that copies were made and distributed to libraries across the ancient world, in Rome, in Pergamon, in Antioch. Some of those copies survived. The works of Euclid, parts of Archimedes, fragments of Eratosthenes. They reached us through Byzantine monks who copied them in the Middle Ages, often without fully understanding what they were preserving. In 1995, underwater archaeologists began excavating the harbor of ancient Alexandria, now submerged due to centuries of earthquakes and rising sea levels. They found ruins of the royal quarter, sphinxes, columns, statues. No scrolls. Papyrus doesn't survive underwater, but the discoveries confirmed that the royal complex, including the library, was far larger than previously believed. And then there are the persistent rumors, never fully confirmed, never fully dismissed, that before the final destruction, certain scrolls were removed to safety. Some historians point to the Vatican Apostolic Archive, which holds 53 miles of shelving containing documents dating back to the 8th century. Much of its contents have never been made public. Whether any Alexandrian texts survive within those walls, no one outside has been permitted to verify. The archive was opened to limited scholarly access only in 1881. Full access has never been granted. The Library of Alexandria was not just a building. It was a choice. A deliberate, extraordinary choice, made by a civilization that decided the most valuable thing a society could possess was not gold, not land, not military power. It was understanding. And it was destroyed, not once, not by accident, but repeatedly, methodically, by people who decided that an informed population was a dangerous one. That choice, made 2,000 years ago, echoes in ways we may never fully measure. Because the tragedy of the library is not what burned. It's what we never got to become.